Hey
What is
everybody.
what is up? How we
What's
doing?
crack-a-lacking?
How's
Oh,
everybody doing?
oh, fantastic! Absolutely fantastic. What's going
Hey,
on,
Good.
Abigail? How you doing?
you.
What's up, Abigail?
And we love you. That's awesome. So what's everybody into?
Oh, trying to stay warm and dry because it's cold again here in Pennsylvania. I want to say it's
Yeah, it
probably
is.
40 some degrees right now and it's raining. So I have a
Oh
fire
no.
going.
It's been raining here all day, but it's like 60 some degrees.
Yeah, I will be throwing wood on my fire
That's
shortly.
that's funny. It's like 50 something here.
Yeah, hang on,
It
I'll check.
can be cold.
It's 47.
You're
Yeah.
watching American Peakers?
Nice. I like that show.
Huh?
Me too.
57?
So
47.
I figure,
It's 47 where Jack said.
I figure we could watch a video together and kind of talk about it a little bit. Since all
That
this
sounds.
new stuff with the Vatican, I
Oh
figured we
yeah.
could watch a little thing about the Vatican.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, there's some
Yeah,
some crazy stuff I'm hearing coming out of the Vatican right now. I mean,
Yeah,
really, you know.
yeah.
that's why
And
they had to
this
get an
is
American
like,
Pope.
I don't know how true this stuff is, right? It is on YouTube, so
Allegedly.
that's that's it's like a
Allegedly.
yeah. But I'll go ahead and pull that up there so we can.
Nice.
And the YouTube channel is called Bible Story.
Nice. Abigail's on Troll Patrol.
Nice.
Good.
Yeah, she's out there waiting for the trolls.
Wait.
I gotta find my charger for my other phone at some point because apparently my cable has died on me, so I can't even look anything up tonight.
Oh no.
That's all right. We got you too, Abigail.
Yeah. So I'm
That's
gonna
right.
mute myself
I'm
and
gonna
let
mute
me
myself
know.
too.
Yeah, and let me know when you guys want me to stop it.
All right.
Sounds good. What's up? Yeah, I'm a fan.
You walk into St. Peter's Basilica and your jaw drops, like you're supposed to be amazed. But stop gawking for a second and actually look. Dead center in that golden hurricane of Baroque insanity is the Cathedra Petri, the throne of St. Peter. That's what they call it. They say it's a symbol of divine authority handed down from the apostle himself. Really? Because that thing looks less like a holy seat and more like the launch pad for a demonic coronation. Let's be blunt. This is not Christian art. This is occult architecture dressed up in religious drag. For towering doctors of the church hold the throne up like cosmic weightlifters, Ambrose, Augustine, Athanasius, and John Chrysostom. Great. Cool names. Legendary figures. But let's look at what they're actually doing here. They're props. Stage dressing for something much darker. Floating above the throne is a massive burst of golden light, with Putti, those little chubby baby angels, swirling around like drugged-up cherubs in a
We're gonna pause it a second and let it catch up with itself. It keeps stopping.
I was
Yeah.
literally, I just unmuted myself. I was going to say that. I figured maybe we could stop and chat for a minute too.
Yeah, let it catch you up.
Yeah, because I wanted to just just kind of touch on a couple things, right? So it's written that you're not supposed to worship false idols, right? Statues, things like that. Okay.
Black
With that,
stones.
yeah, right. Okay. And that is written. So with that said, why is it that it seems like some people worship Mary or worship the Pope even? You know what I mean? Like, he's just a man. That's it. This one happens to be from Chicago. I can't remember his real name either. What is it? Philip? Something like that. He goes by
It's Leo now, man. Because
Yeah,
I know,
yeah.
like, 'cause my
He goes-
my dog's
Leo.
name was Leo, and my
Because-
cat's
Totally.
name is Leona.
yes. Yep. But yeah, he's from Chicago. He's multilingual. So I know he was
Yeah.
he was doing his address in Italian, so but
Have you ever heard of an American Pope?
This is the first American Pope, and he went to Villanova, I heard, like outside of Philadelphia.
really?
Yeah. There's pictures of him with Villanova jerseys on, and like a
And then
sweatshirt.
you know what the Jesuit is, right?
Yeah.
The what?
Jesuits.
It's like a certain branch of Christianity, right?
They lump us all into the same categories, and we are not. The Jesuits and the Catholics are the same, though, pretty well. They all answer to the Vatican, I think. I'm not so sure on that, but they're about the same.
Oh, the Vatican got power. They got like some of the most amount of real estate in the world. I think they own.
Oh yeah, yeah. They've got
Maybe
some
like
serious
the
power.
second or third most.
Well, and
in,
if
like,
you
the
look
world.
into it, see how many of them like is in our government system too.
I'll be right back.
They're the bunch. But
Oh, I
thought
know
this was
that.
interesting. It gets more interesting as we go.
Can you
think
guys
it'll
still hear me?
work, or- Yeah. I can
Yeah.
hear you.
All right, good. Sorry, I'm just I'm answering a text message real quick. It's kinda
You're okay. I'm going to turn the video back on now.
fever dream. And right in the center of all that chaos is the Holy Spirit, depicted as a dove trapped inside an oval window that might as well be a sun disk. Yeah, that's not just some pretty stained glass. That's a solar symbol. A literal representation of the ancient pagan sun deity.
We appreciate you too, Abigail.
Let me guess. You're thinking about going to therapy. And as a therapist myself,
Heck yeah.
Oh, but the commercial has no problem at all, right?
of course I'm going to say that's a
Oh yeah,
great
commercials
idea.
gonna work. Blah blah blah. We don't want to hear you. Mute it. We could I could lip sync for her. She's talking. My upper. lip
Welcome to the
smells.
Catholic Church, where old gods get recycled with better
I don't
PR.
know why.
And that chair? The actual throne? Most
know
people
why.
have no
Devil.
clue what they're even looking at. It's an empty
Facts.
shell built around a decaying wooden seat rumored to date back to the first pope. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. In fact, that so-called relic has zero verifiable evidence linking it to Peter. None. The Vatican's own admission? The original chair was likely assembled centuries after Peter even died. But sure, let's call it holy and worship it like it descended from heaven. Dig into the iconography, don't just glaze over it, and you start to see the real language being spoken here. The chaotic flair of bronze. The twisting forms. The illusion of movement and drama and ecstasy. This is Bernini at his most manipulative. The man wasn't designing for devotion, he was designing for control.
What's up,
He
Stephen?
knew how to hijack
Hey,
the
Stephen
senses
Knight.
and hit your subconscious. And this whole installation screams one thing: manufactured awe. It's not meant to elevate your soul. It's meant to overwhelm your critical thinking. Let's zoom out a bit. The entire structure is framed like a throne room, not for a humble fisherman from Galilee, but for a deity. And I'm not talking about Christ.
It looks
Look
like a
at the
serpent
symbolism,
on it.
the elevation, the centrality, the rays of light beaming out like divine authority. This is
What's
the
up,
throne
Tiff?
of a god. But who's God? Because when you compare this throne to depictions of the throne of Satan in apocalyptic literature, you start seeing parallels that no one wants to admit. Power, light, chaos, centralized worship. We're not talking about the Beatitudes here, we're talking about dominion. You want to go deeper? Fine. Let's talk Mithraism. Ancient Roman cult. Initiation-based. Secretive. And guess what? Mithras had a seat of authority, too. A cosmic throne surrounded by zodiacal figures and light symbolism. The early church didn't destroy those cults, they absorbed them. Bernini didn't invent the aesthetic here. He recycled it. The throne in St. Peter's isn't just a pretty piece of art, it's a Frankenstein construct made from the bones of dead gods. And the church sits on it like it's the foundation of all truth.
So did you catch that? Hey, Tiff.
How you doing, Tiff?
How it said that
What's
it's a
up,
bone
Tiffany?
structure underneath of old God
Yes.
that the church sits right on top of.
Yes.
Yeah, that's crazy.
There's literal tombs under the Vatican where they do put the old popes, right? And they think that they have St. Peter's tomb down there.
Yeah.
All right, we'll keep watching now. I wanted to see if you caught
What's up,
that.
Tiffany?
Yep.
Yeah,
It's
it's
raining
Now
raining
let's
here.
address the elephant in the basilica. Why call it the chair of Peter if Peter never sat on it? Why build a monstrous golden altar to an invisible legacy? Because this isn't about Peter. It never was. It's about cementing power. It's about crafting an icon so overwhelming, so theologically untouchable, that no one dares question the legitimacy of the institution behind it. Oh, you doubt the Pope's authority? How dare you? Don't you see the glory of the throne? That's the scam. The throne doesn't prove the truth of Peter's legacy, it's designed to silence dissent. And if you think I'm just blowing smoke, look at the history of papal power. Every time a pope speaks ex cathedra, from the chair, it's considered infallible. Yeah, that's right. That ridiculous oversized art piece justifies the idea that one man's words are literally above questioning. That's not spirituality. That's mind control. That's political theater with incense. And before some Vatican apologist jumps in with, but it's symbolic. Yeah, no kidding. Symbols matter. That's the point. Especially when they're this massive, this central, this loaded with unspoken meaning. You don't spend decades constructing something like this unless it serves a purpose beyond the decorative. And that purpose is clear: authority. Undeniable, untouchable, divine-sounding authority. Whether the source is actually divine or not doesn't matter, perception is the real weapon here. So ask yourself, if a chair becomes holy because they
Can we
say
pause it
Peter
real
sat
quick?
on it, and the building becomes sacred.
So I just wanted to say where he actually said it's the perception that really matters. And I say that all the time, that perception is reality, and whatever reality they happen to be pushing out to everyone is what they're eating up. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah.
it's very deceiving,
Yes.
right? People think they're
Extremely
worshiping God, but they don't even realize what God they're even worshiping. And they've been taught these traditions from generation to generation, right? So
Yep.
from generation to generation, they've been deceived. It's crazy. Happy Wednesday, Daniel. Hey, Stephen. I missed your comment. How are you? How are you, Daniel?
Sorry, I will be right back. Got a text again.
Okay. I'm going to play this video some more. And happy hump day, everybody.
Because they say Peter was buried under it, and the entire power structure rests on that assumption. What happens if the assumption is wrong? You can't say it. You're not allowed. The entire world religion would collapse under its own weight. And they know that. That's why the throne is gold. That's why the lighting is designed to hit your emotions before your logic. That's why you're told to revere it, not question it.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. The Roman Catholic Church has a lot of power. They own a lot of property, like I said, too.
Sorry, guys. I got to take care of this. No, I'm not there.
It's all good.
I muted
My
myself.
mom here.
Yeah. You can't trust your emotions, and that's what they do. They play on your emotions. Right? With the music, with the pictures, with anything that they teach. So we'll play a little bit more of it.
Let's cut through the incense cloud and talk about the real foundation of St. Peter's Basilica. Not the faith. Not Peter. The dirt. The bones. The bedrock. You've been told it's sacred. But when you actually dig, literally and historically, what you find is a pagan necropolis and a temple complex that predates Christianity by centuries. The Vatican didn't just pick a nice spot for their central shrine. They hijacked a site already pulsing with spiritual power.
And that's something else, is like the placement of things and where they decide to put things is important too, as well as their symbolism and things like that.
Yes. Yes. I have to leave real quick, but I will be right back in like 5 minutes. I just have to make a quick phone call.
Okay.
That's cool, man.
I'll be right back, guys. I promise I won't be gone long.
Power that didn't belong to the
Sorry.
Christian God. Go look at the documentation from the 1940s excavations beneath the basilica.
There was a moment there where I really thought I was going to pass out.
They found tombs. Pagan tombs. Full-on Greco-Roman burial chambers. You're not standing on holy ground, you're standing on a city of the dead. A pagan city of the dead. And right there, buried beneath the sacred altar, is what they call the Trophy of Gaius.
And if you notice, they are always centering everything around like their ancient, you know what I mean, relatives and things like that, people that are dead. Like they build things upon the dead, but in God there's life, right?
Well, a lot of it goes back to the ancient Rome, because in ancient Rome, like one of the Roman emperors like became Christian, and like everybody like became Christian, like, and that's where like the Pope and all that comes from.
Well, the Pope and stuff's based off of what scripture of the Bible, which is when Jesus said to Peter, "On this rock I will build my church." And Peter's name was Petra, which means stone, and that's where they think Peter was the first pope, and that it wasn't that he built his church on Peter. It was he built his church on the teachings of Peter. The foundations of the church would be built on the teachings of Peter, what Peter was teaching, not Peter himself, right? Because God had no respect of person. And if you have Jesus Christ, then you have you when you pray, you speak directly to the Father. You don't need a priest or a pope, because Jesus is the ultimate high priest. He is the Pope. He is that for us. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I got you.
Yeah. So that's why,
It's a structure the church insists marks the burial site of Peter. Except the bones found there weren't even identified as his. For years, they were stored in boxes. No labels. No inscriptions. Just bones. Later, they pulled some random fragments from a wall niche and declared them Peter's. That's the level of science we're dealing with, reverse-engineered sainthood. And don't get distracted by the pious language about building a church where Peter died. Constantine's motivation wasn't divine, it was imperial. He wanted to unite a collapsing empire under one universal religion, and he needed a monument powerful enough to anchor that agenda. So he didn't build on fresh land. He took over a spot already loaded with esoteric charge. The Vatican Hill wasn't empty countryside. It was home to shrines, altars, and burial temples, some dedicated to Mithras, others to Cybele, and more we're not even allowed to study fully. The Vatican literally bulldozed sacred pagan sites to pour the concrete of Catholic supremacy. They didn't erase the old gods. They paved over them. Layered Christian iconography right on top like wallpaper over bloodstains. The entire structure is a merger between Imperial Rome and its spiritual legacy. And that legacy is not Christian in origin. It's solar, astral, and ritualistic. The obelisk in the square? That thing is from Heliopolis, Egypt. A sun.
so pay attention to these signs and stuff, because you see them regular,
I'm
right?
listening.
Yeah, so pay attention to what they mean, right? Well, hello, how are you? Is that Husani? Is that Husani?
How's it going?
I'm sorry, I can't pronounce your name. But pay
Cult city. They didn't just place it there for aesthetics. They moved it, intact, from its original pagan position and planted it right in front of the basilica. That's not architecture. That's a spiritual power grab. The Catholic Church wants you to think the basilica is pure, untouched by
There's a lot of
paganism.
cop sirens in the back
But
here.
its
I'm going
DNA
in.
tells a different story. The layout, the symbolism,
Philadelphia
the relic
for you.
obsession, it's a Frankenstein religion built from the corpses of older cults. And the Vatican is proud of it.
It's true.
They give tours. They show off the crypts. But they can't.
Were
It
you
is.
recently injured in a car accident? Look at this
Yeah.
check
La, la,
mark
la,
or
The context.
That's you, copyright.
You'll see sarcophagi with pagan gods. You'll see altars to Saturn, reliefs of Venus, remnants of Etruscan magic systems. But the narrative is always, this was before us. No, it wasn't. It's still there. It never left. Ever wonder why the church resists open academic access to those underground levels? Because letting independent archaeologists
Caroline?
inside would blow the lid off centuries of curated mythology. The Vatican's entire legitimacy depends on the sanctity of that location. So they gatekeep. They publish their own findings. They edit the narrative before it reaches the public. And they slap a holy label on bones and rocks that should have gone to a museum.
Wow.
Do you believe that 100%? Hey, Caroline, how are you?
Hey, Caroline.
Caroline, how you been?
Oh, damn! Just giving Jack the thing.
Oh yeah, no,
That's
she always says
that,
that.
that is our love language, right?
Yeah.
The
That's
middle
how
finger.
that's how me and
That's right.
Caroline say hello.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah. And that is true. Like they don't let anyone in that lower level where the corpses
Yep.
are.
Yep.
You can't, and they do post their own archaeological finds, and
Uh-huh.
they control all the media that comes, from there.
Yep.
So
So wonder why that is. What are they trying to hide from everybody, huh? You know? Right?
a
They said they
lot.
had like some kind of machine that can go back in time or something. You ever hear that thing?
Oh yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah,
It's
which
called
one? The bell?
what is it? The chronology.
Yeah. That's it. That's it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
They
that's
can
crazy.
change history and stuff with it.
Yeah,
Like
and they could like view like historical
word
events with
at
it.
the time.
Caroline, I would like to say almost I don't know how to answer that, but I'm gonna say good, really good.
Yeah, today was my
You know?
first day like really working. So I had
And
orientation the other day, and then I worked today, so pretty damn good.
Yeah.
and my time is finally freeing up a little bit, and my life ain't as crazy as it has been the past couple of months. We're making strides. We're doing good.
Good. And good.
Heck yeah, one step
Need
at a
some
time.
relief. Need some relief.
I
Man, I
did.
would be doing deliveries too, but it's raining. So
Yeah, well, that PA rain, man, it's like people don't understand. Yeah, it's
it
May.
sucks, man.
Go out in it. It's like it's November and like late November, when it should be snow or ice and it just won't freeze.
Right.
Like the one Guns N' Roses wrote that song about, like that cold.
Yeah, it's my birth month. you know.
You're November too?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
man, I'm the good Sagittarius, man. Like the December ones suck. It's the November ones that are the good Sagittarius. All the December ones are terrible people usually. Just saying.
Caroline, my life has been pretty sucky. My uncle had a heart attack and stuff, and we've been in and out of the hospital. And then he came to stay with me. Then he went home. Then now he's sick again, and like he is in such bad shape that he can't be left alone. We're getting hospice out to try to help because he's going to have like home IVs and stuff because he's not eating, he's not drinking. I mean, it's tough, you know.
It's
But
like
I know God's in control, and I just have to have faith that everything is going to work out.
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you, Caroline. I really appreciate it. And I will say a prayer for you, girl.
I'll say a prayer for you too, Caroline.
Always. Always. We have to, like, we're so far away from each other. All we can do is lift each other up in prayer, and
Exactly.
be there for one another when each other need it.
Exactly.
wow.
Yep. Yes.
That's all we can do. And that means the world to me,
Yes. Yep. Yes, it does.
So we're going to watch some more of this.
Absolutely.
Hey, C. Chester.
Yeah,
See,
throw it up.
Chester,
Yo!
how are you?
I love C. Chester.
How
I
you
do
doing,
too.
C. Chester?
Her and Caroline are the
Yep.
best. Everybody is. But I've known them for a while now.
Oh, Caroline, I can identify with the treading water.
Oh, I got you, girl.
Yeah, I can too. I've been there.
And that plate does get full, and then it gets wobbly, and you think you're going to dump it all out in the floor.
Yeah.
For sure. You think you're going to lose it.
Yeah.
Here
Gotta
comes
keep
the
fighting.
rain, guys.
Oh, it's starting to rain there now?
Yeah, it's been raining on and off all day. All right, we'll play some more of this.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Abigail.
Abigail,
Abigail. Our favorite little
that's our
sister.
girl.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's be real. Constantine didn't get baptized until he was dying. He spent most of his life as a sun-worshipping emperor who treated Christ like a political mascot. He didn't build St. Peter's to honor a fisherman. He built it to override centuries of Roman gods and replace them with a central deity who served empire, not truth. The basilica wasn't the start of Christianity's rise, it was the start of its imperial mutation. Even the name, St. Peter's Basilica, is misleading. Peter never built anything there. There's no gospel record of him claiming that hill. The name is branding. Corporate religious branding. And it worked.
Do you get that corporate branding?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what the religious, man-made religious church has become. It's an
Yes.
organization, and they're part of, like your small churches in your hometown is a part of a bigger organization, right? And that
Yes.
big organization tells them bylaws that they have to live by, which the church has to live by. And if you don't live by such bylaws, you cannot be a member of said church.
Yes.
But in the Bible, I do not remember Jesus ever having a denomination. I don't remember him even having a certain practice. I remember him following what the Spirit of God told him to do, what his father told him to do.
Mhm.
And that was it. There was no, he wasn't Protestant, he wasn't Baptist, he wasn't none of that.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting.
And I honestly think denominations were created to separate us
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely.
keep us divided. Could you
Because
imagine
what the
if everybody got together in one mind and one accord, what could happen?
it's
And do
definitely to
you,
keep us divided. That's what it does.
and do
Yeah, he
you think that they
controls the narrative, controls history.
right? And do you think they honestly want us to bind together?
No.
No, they want to conquer the world, right?
Yes. Yep.
And
Divide
everyone,
and conquer.
exactly.
United we stand.
Divided we fall.
Exactly.
Billions of people now face that altar and believe they're praying where Peter
That's
once
right,
walked.
Abigail.
But the structure beneath their feet says otherwise. It says this place belonged to the dead long before it belonged to the saved. Let's talk about the architecture. The basilica's dome was designed using golden ratios tied to celestial alignment. Not just beautiful design, intentional symbolic geometry. It's aligned not for prayer but for power.
Who else uses ancient geometry?
Masons.
The Freemasons. There you go. Think
Yes.
of it.
Yep.
You're standing in a solar-coded engine built to harness reverence and convert it into institutional control. The light shafts, the central axis, the symmetry, this is
Something else I want to bring out, Rob. Okay, so when you first start school, what's the first thing that they start teaching you?
The
Math.
alphabet.
No, they teach you how to line up in a single file line and to
Yeah,
follow
that's true.
order and to follow the rules,
Pledge of Allegiance.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And you do pledge your allegiance, right?
Yep.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's true.
This isn't spiritual inspiration. It's spiritual engineering. Even the cross at the top isn't exempt. It sits on a globe, an ancient pagan symbol of dominion. In fact, the entire basilica is a map of dominion. Over minds. Over souls.
This is what Ivy League universities you can get into with a 3.
It doesn't represent the triumph of Christianity. It represents the absorption of every powerful symbol from every defeated cult. That's not faith. That's assimilation. You think they'd build the most important church in the world on a neutral site? No. They chose a battlefield. A spiritual battlefield. Because the Vatican has never just been a church. It's always been a throne room. A ritual center. A power node in the architecture of control. And everything beneath it, the bones, the bricks, the stolen gods, they're all still whispering. You've seen the Vatican crest. 2 keys crossed under a triple crown. Gold and silver. The keys of the kingdom. Sounds holy, right? That's the branding. That's the story they've packaged for 2,000 years. But once you decode the symbols, once you stop taking them at face value, it's clear this isn't about salvation. It's about access control. The Vatican didn't choose the imagery of keys to open the doors of heaven. They chose them to show who controls what gets locked, and more importantly, who gets shut out. The gold key represents divine authority, and the silver one is earthly power. They're bound together by a red cord, unity of the spiritual and temporal. That's the official interpretation. Here's the problem. That entire setup didn't come from Jesus. There's no passage in the Gospels where Christ hands anyone literal keys and says, "Here's your badge, you're the gatekeeper now." The whole doctrine comes from a single verse in Matthew, "I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven," a verse that, contextually, is ambiguous at best. But the Catholic Church turned it into a political doctrine, a legal weapon, and a visual stamp of total authority. The imagery of jewel keys goes way back before Christianity. You can trace it through Babylonian priesthoods, Mithraic orders, Roman cultic societies. The idea of 2 keys as symbols of dual access, life and death, above and below, light and shadow, is ancient. And the Vatican adopted it, rebranded it, and sold it as holy. But anyone with a background in esotericism knows exactly what it means: control over both realms. That's not theology. That's sorcery. The symbolic claim that one institution gets to dictate the terms of access to both this world and the next. Now, take that symbol and pair it with history. During the medieval period, the Pope wielded the power of the keys to excommunicate kings, anoint emperors, and launch crusades. You think this was about heaven? This was about real-world dominion. The church wasn't a spiritual refuge. It was an empire. And those keys were the ultimate weapon. With them, the church claimed the exclusive right to forgive sins, to interpret scripture, to administer sacraments, to decide who was in and who was out. That's not religion.
No.
That's a security protocol with holy water sprinkled on top. Look at how this works psychologically. You're born. You sin. You're told you need access to heaven. But you can't go there on your own. Someone has the key. And guess what? It's not you. It's the clergy. It's the church. It's the men who wear robes, speak Latin, and live behind marble gates. That's the trap. They created a system where your soul's freedom is never in your hands. You're permanently on probation, spiritually locked out unless you follow their script. Baptism. Confession. Communion. Pay. Obey. Repeat. It's access control master's religion. And the keys didn't stop at theology. They were weaponized in legal codes too. The concept of the papal bull carried the authority of the keys. The Pope could invalidate marriages, crown kings, seize land, and command armies, all backed by this supposed divine right to bind and loose. Don't skip over that phrase, to bind and to loose. That's the core of this whole system. It's not about unlocking heaven. It's about locking down control. Bind your actions. Loose your guilt. Bind your money. Loose your penance. It's transactional control dressed in sacred terms. You want proof the keys were never about spiritual liberation? Look at how they're displayed. Not in humility. Not as a symbol of service, but as a royal crest plastered across flags, robes, walls, and rings. This is not the posture of spiritual guidance. This is branding. This is power marketing. Every time you see that crest, it's not telling you about Jesus. It's telling you who runs the kingdom. Even the color symbolism tells the truth. Gold, the sun, divinity, ruling power. Silver, the moon, reflection, hidden knowledge. These aren't random artistic choices. They're ancient alchemical codes. The red cord that ties them? That's the path of blood. Sacrifice. Ritual. Look into Rosicrucian texts, Hermetic diagrams, and Masonic symbolism. You'll find the same elements repeated over and over.
Yeah, there
The
it is.
Vatican didn't invent these symbols. They inherited them. And they knew exactly what they meant. Let's talk about head coverings, the tiara, the mitre, the veils, every piece of ceremonial headgear in the Vatican arsenal. You've seen it all, the triple crown, the bishop's mitre, the cicchetto, the hooded robes during certain masses. You probably thought it's all just tradition, harmless pageantry. Wrong.
It's all ritualistic.
Yes, it is
It's
definitely
all
all ritualistic.
Okay, so when you're doing rituals, it's sorcery.
Yes.
And sorcery belongs to the devil, right?
It's
Well,
witchcraft.
I think
There you go.
like all religions do that though, you know.
Well, they get into a form and a fashion and a tradition. And Jesus speaks highly against tradition of man in the Bible. He got highly upset at the people for following the traditions of man instead of following after God.
Yes. Yes.
That was a big problem with the Pharisees, you know. And
Yeah.
see, there's nothing new. The Bible says there's nothing new under the sun, right?
That's true.
So the Pharisees back then would be like the churches today, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they never understood Jesus,
No, they didn't.
right? Because they wasn't of his father. Remember that.
Yes.
These aren't fashion choices. They're not just symbols of religious hierarchy. These are tools of psychological and ritual control. Every piece has esoteric origins, and the church doesn't just know it, they built their system around it. Start with the papal tiara. 3 layers. 3 crowns. You've been told it represents the Pope's authority in heaven, on earth, and under the earth. That should raise red flags immediately. Under the earth? Since when does a spiritual leader need dominion over the underworld? That concept isn't biblical, it's imperial. In ancient times, triple crowns weren't worn by prophets or disciples. They were worn by kings, conquerors, and high priests of pagan temples. And now it sits on the head of a man claiming to represent Christ. The man who said, "My kingdom is not of this world." But they still made the Pope's crown out of solid gold and stacked it 3 levels high. Each layer representing a tier of control. Spirit, mind, body. Heaven, earth, hell. Doctrine, dogma, discipline. However you want to decode it, it's not humility. It's domination, top down, through and through. It's not an accident that during coronation rituals, the tiara isn't placed by God or even by the Pope himself. It's placed by another cardinal, establishing that this power is passed along hierarchically by man. This is bureaucracy in sacred disguise. Let's move to the mitre, the tall, pointed hat worn by bishops and popes during ceremonies. It's said to represent the tongues of fire from Pentecost. But when you actually examine the shape and historical precedent, you'll see it's a direct lift from the headgear of the ancient priests of Dagon, the fish god of the
It looks like a
Philistines.
fish, yeah.
Look it up. The Dagon priest's hat was shaped like a fish head with the mouth gaping open, and when seen from the side, the mitre matches it almost identically. Same vertical structure, same split top, same hollow interior. You're watching a fertility cult remixed for modern religion. Even the Latin root of mitre traces to mitra, the headband of pagan priests in Greece.
Wow.
Are you driving way?
Oh yeah, great commercial.
Da, da, da,
Ah.
da, da, da.
Yep. That's when McFly starts.
This was a
singing.
mark of initiation into mystery schools, not a symbol of spiritual servanthood. You put this on your head when you were inducted into a system of hidden knowledge, ritual hierarchy, and enforced secrecy. Sound familiar? And then there's the tsaketo, the small skull cap worn by clergy from bishops to the Pope himself. The explanation you will hear is that it keeps the head warm, or is a token of humility. But in esoteric circles, the head covering serves a different purpose: containment. In ancient ritual magic, covering the crown chakra symbolized the sealing of spiritual energy, the restriction of divine transmission, and the redirection of willpower toward institutional channels. In other words, it disconnects the individual from universal energy and reconnects them to hierarchy. Don't brush this off as overinterpretation. The Vatican is the most symbolically calculated institution in modern history. Everything means something. Everything is precise. You think they just copied pagan headwear by coincidence? These are scholars, ritualists, Jesuits, master manipulators. They know exactly what every fold of every garment does psychologically to both the wearer and the observer. You walk into a cathedral and see a man wearing a fish hat, sitting under a golden dome, holding a scepter. You're not being led to God, you're being visually conditioned to obey. And the veil? Let's not pretend that's about modesty. When nuns or clergy veil themselves, it's part of an ancient archetype of cloaking power, of transforming the human into the symbol. Once the veil goes on, you're not supposed to see the individual. You're supposed to see the institution. The body disappears. The hierarchy speaks. That's how cults function. That's how.
That does make sense, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
I
Like
know
when
another
you walk-
cult that does that too.
When you walk in and you see someone sitting on a throne with a big old fish-looking hat and holding a scepter, you feel like you should do what that person says, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
especially the veil thing. Got me
And
thinking.
then when you see the nun, like when you see a nun, you know you got to act accordingly.
Yes.
You better fall into line, right?
Yes. Yes.
Isn't that something, though?
Uh-huh. It is.
Veil, hijab, same thing.
That's something. And it's all imagery. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
All imagery. There's
Yes.
no power behind that. You get it? There's nothing behind that.
Yes.
God's not in it. There's no power behind it. I'm
It's
just saying.
control. It's about
Exactly.
control.
And McFly, I laugh at that when you said hijab, but really you're not wrong at all.
I
It's
know.
just a different religion, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Same.
things like I've seen similarities. Like I was like,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. This actually all started for me years ago when those Zeitgeist movies came out.
yeah,
Because that's
yeah. I
what-
used to
that's-
watch them.
Yes, and the Zeitgeist movies actually really broke down religion, you know, to that point. And I was like, wow, so all organized religion is corrupt and fraud.
Yeah, no,
You know?
I've always said that.
on Scooby.
Scooby Dooby Doo.
Organized religion, organized crime. Think about it.
Yeah. We're watching a thing about the Vatican, Scoob.
All funded by the government. Just saying.
Yeah. Did I remind you guys?
Or another government.
Sexiest man on YouTube. There you go, Scoob.
Well, I thought I was, but
Boom.
I'm still here.
How initiatory religions always operated. The veil isn't humility. It's erasure. Erasure of identity, of independent will, of dissent. Even the materials used matter. Silk, gold thread, ivory, jewels. These garments are not made for poverty, they're crafted for spectacle, for elevation. Every piece of it reinforces the same thing. You are looking at someone closer to God than you. Someone who gets to speak for God, interpret God, mediate God. It's theater, yes, but it's theater with teeth. Because when you dress someone like a deity, people treat them like one. You think it's a coincidence that the Pope wears white while all his subordinates wear darker robes. It's a visual hierarchy.
and think of how people are over the Pope, right? They adore him. They literally worship him. They have days of mourning when the Pope dies. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I like the guy, you know.
Well, I mean, it's worshiping that man, though. You're not worshiping God. You're
No,
worshiping a man.
But I could like the. I'm not worshiping him, but I could like the guy. You know what I mean? Like the old Pope,
Right.
I liked him. I thought he was a good guy.
Well, I'm just saying. They do put him up there way high up, higher than he should be.
They do. Some of them,
No, I get that.
it's worship. It's worship. That's what it is.
That's what I just said, Jack. That's what
Yes,
I
Yeah,
just said.
and that's why they're like, "There's an American Pope." Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's from
Absolutely.
Chicago.
Hierarchy. Light on top,
You went to Villanova.
obedience below. You think it's a coincidence bishops wear purple, the color of imperial Rome.
Okay, listen. We all know what the color of purple, the purple robe symbolize, right? Royal, right?
Royalty,
We all,
yes.
Yeah.
we all know
Yes.
that.
Yes.
They are no more royal than we are.
Nope.
Okay?
We're all human.
That's it. That's it. That's true. People worship the craziest things, Scooby.
That is
Just
true.
say it. Just say it.
People
Or
do,
that
though.
cardinals wear red, symbolizing blood and martyrdom, but also control, sacrifice, and ancient power in alchemical systems. There's nothing random here. This is not clothing. It's armor. It's programming. It's encoded messaging, reinforced over centuries, generation after generation, until no one remembers where the symbols came from, only that they feel sacred. And that's the goal, to make the feeling of authority so overwhelming, so untouchable, that nobody stops to ask why the men of God are dressed like the kings of Babylon.
That's an interesting point.
Yes. Yes.
Really?
The King of Babylon. Yes. How nuts, right? And what didn't the
That's
Scooby,
interesting.
We love you, Scoob. Come
I
on,
We
love you,
Scooby.
Scoob.
we
You're a
do
brother,
love
man.
you, Scooby.
I got some Scooby snacks for you. Scooby.
Oh, God. That
Scooby,
really,
are you a little brother or an older brother, though? I don't know. How old are
I'm the
you?
big
why
brother.
does it matter? He's a brother. That's all that matters.
Well, because like Larry and I were talking about it, and Larry is technically the middle brother, right? Because we're just basing it off of age, because I'm 45, Larry's 43, and then Charlie, he's the youngest. So
I'm the biggest. I'm the big brother.
you're the big brother. You are the big brother.
Yeah. Well, my brother, he was like the baby, so I was always the jerk, the one that got in
I
trouble.
mean, I'm the baby sister. I'm the baby. Like,
I'm the big brother,
I'm young. You're not my big brother.
not your big brother.
No,
I'm my
a
brother's big brother.
you're not my big brother.
No, I'm my brother's big brother.
You're my brother's keeper. You're my brother's trapper keeper.
I'm the oldest, unfortunately. Aw. Dude, I don't believe that for a minute. I don't believe
Now I
you're
can't get Joe Dirt out of my head.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. You're my sister. You're my
Let's
sister.
deal with the so-called burial of the Apostle Peter, because it's one of the biggest institutional assumptions that the Vatican has used to build an entire empire of spiritual.
And guess what, guys? It's a lie. I remember. It's a lie. They built their whole thing on a lie.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
authority. You've heard the claim over and over that Peter, the rock of the church, was martyred in Rome.
Was he martyred?
Sorry, I get excited. Listen to this spirit. Seriously, this is what they built their whole church on. I ain't even kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's mind blowing. It really is. And
Crucified
all you have to
upside
do is
down
look.
and buried directly beneath the altar of St. Peter's Basilica. That claim is not just the basis for the church's location, it's the cornerstone of papal succession, apostolic continuity, and the infallibility myth. So how solid is the evidence? Spoil.
It's not solid. Sorry.
No.
It's not.
Crikey.
Yeah.
It's not
Right.
solid. It's propaganda wrapped in marble. Start with the primary sources. There's no direct scriptural or eyewitness account that Peter ever made it to Rome. The New Testament doesn't place him there, and early Christian writings only mention it ambiguously, decades after his death. The earliest document that suggests Peter was in Rome is from around 150 AD, nearly a century after he supposedly died. That's not historical documentation. That's hearsay turned into dogma. Then there's the actual excavation. In the 1940s, under Pope Pius XII, the Vatican authorized a secret archaeological dig beneath the basilica. And of course, they packaged it as a sacred mission. What they found was a necropolis filled with tombs from various centuries, many pagan. Then they pointed to one wall, known as the Graffiti Wall, which had the name Speta scrawled in Greek. That's the big smoking gun? A name on a wall in a city where Peter was a common name? That's supposed to justify 2,000 years of spiritual hierarchy? The bones? Let's talk about the bones. The Vatican announced in the 1960s that they had found the remains of St. Peter. But here's the detail they buried: the bones weren't even found in the original tomb. They were discovered in a box, wrapped in purple cloth with gold thread, in a different section of the necropolis. And they weren't even intact. They were fragmentary. Skull missing. Feet missing. Probably because he was crucified upside down, they say, because we just accept that as fact now. There's no physical proof of that claim, only tradition passed down and repeated until it became untouchable. Then came the carbon dating. Or rather, the refusal to allow proper independent carbon dating. Why? Because the Church doesn't want a scientific process contradicting its sacred narrative. Every test and every interpretation has been done internally by hand-picked experts operating under direct Vatican oversight. This isn't investigation, it's damage control. Even the so-called Trophy of Gaius, the structure that supposedly marks Peter's grave, is questionable. The only reason it's called that is because of a fragment of a 2nd century text that refers to a monument to the apostles on Vatican Hill. Not a tomb. Not a body. A monument. In other words, symbolic, not literal. The rest was assumed by later clerics who had every political reason to anchor their authority to Peter being buried exactly there. Let's remember why this is also important to them. If Peter wasn't buried there, then the Vatican loses its physical link to apostolic power. If Peter wasn't even in Rome, the Roman Church's claim to be the seat of Christian truth collapses. And if the Pope isn't the direct successor to Peter, then the entire hierarchy built on that idea becomes a farce. That's the scale of what's at stake. That's why they can't afford to admit any uncertainty. They can't allow open access to independent scholars. They can't entertain serious academic debate. The narrative has to stay airtight. Because if people start asking real questions about the bones under the basilica, they'll start asking questions about the gold above it too.
Like a relentless weed, moderate
that's
to severe
crazy.
ulcerative colitis
That really
symptoms can
is.
keep coming
That is
back.
crazy.
La 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 la.
So Scooby says,
The throne,
read
the
the book of
keys.
Joshua.
the tiara, the robes, the rituals. It's all connected to this one foundational story that Peter died there, was buried there, and passed on his authority through an unbroken line to the men who sit on that throne today. But when you take that narrative apart, piece by piece, what's left? A few bone fragments of unknown origin. A name scribbled on a wall. Centuries of repetition. That's the real foundation under the Vatican. Not divine certainty, strategic ambiguity, locked in by fear, tradition, and a refusal to let go of power. You think people would be outraged if the bones turned out to be someone else's? No. They'd be told it doesn't matter. That it's symbolic. That Peter is spiritually present. Because once the institution loses control of the literal, they retreat into metaphor. And metaphor is impossible to disprove. That's the game. Keep the narrative vague enough that it can't be directly challenged, but emotionally potent enough that no one wants to. Let's get into the uncomfortable truth about Paul, the man most Christians quote more than Jesus himself. And that's not an exaggeration. Go into any modern church, and you'll hear more about Paul's letters than the actual teachings of Christ. Why? Because Paul didn't just write letters. He rewrote the entire foundation of early Christianity. And the Vatican knows it. They built an entire theological structure on Paul, not because he was the most faithful disciple, but because he was the most institutionally useful. Paul wasn't one of the original 12. He never walked with Jesus. He never heard him teach. He claimed a vision on a road, alone, with no witnesses, and then positioned himself as the new voice of divine revelation. And somehow, that was enough to override the people who actually knew Jesus in the flesh. Let's look at the facts. Paul was a Pharisee, a Roman citizen, fluent in the legal and philosophical systems of both Jewish and imperial structures. That alone should have raised red flags. He wasn't some poor fisherman risking everything to follow a revolutionary rabbi. He was an educated enforcer, originally hunting Christians down before flipping sides. And the story we've been told? He saw a light, heard a voice, and suddenly transformed into the church's #1 apostle. But here's the issue: the Jesus Paul preaches is radically different from the Jesus of the Gospels. Paul's Jesus isn't focused on the kingdom of God on earth, on justice, on freeing the oppressed. Paul's Jesus is cosmic, abstract, and conveniently supports obedience, hierarchy, and salvation through faith alone. That version works a lot better for an empire than the one who flips tables and calls out corrupt priests. Now read Paul's letters again, this time with that lens. They're not accounts of Jesus' life. They're theological manifestos. They don't talk about what Jesus did. They define what Jesus means. That's where the entire church structure gets its legitimacy. Not from Jesus' own words, but from Paul's reinterpretation of them. He introduces original sin as a core problem. He turns crucifixion into a blood payment. He shifts the focus from collective liberation to individual guilt. These weren't Christ's teachings. These were systems of control packaged in Scripture. And the most revealing part? Paul constantly attacks the original apostles. He undermines Peter. He challenges James. He says in Galatians that his gospel didn't come from men, but by revelation. That's code for, I don't answer to the people who actually follow Jesus. Paul creates a parallel authority. And the early church accepted it, not because it was more truthful, but because it was more scalable. Paul gave Rome a version of Christianity it could use. A theology that could be turned into doctrine. Doctrine that could become law. Law that could justify power. Think about it. Without Paul, there's no universal church. There's no doctrine of salvation by grace through faith. There's no theological foundation for excluding women, silencing dissenters, and centralizing control in a single institution. The radical, decentralized, countercultural movement started by Jesus gets turned into a highly organized, male-dominated, obedience-focused machine. That's not evolution. That's a hostile takeover. The Vatican loves Paul. They depend on Paul. Nearly every major doctrine of the Church, from clerical authority to Eucharistic theology, rests not on Jesus' words, but on Paul's framework. The Council of Trent? Paul. The Reformation Wars? Paul. The idea that you're born broken and need the Church to fix you? 100% Paul. The Gnostics weren't quiet about this. They accused Paul of being a false apostle, a plant, a misdirect. They rejected his letters. They said his Christ was not the true Christ. And it's not hard to see why. Even within the canonical texts, Paul's tone is authoritarian. He calls himself a father.
But let's not forget that the church did the same thing to Jesus. Okay, right. And they never did understand Jesus, and they wouldn't understand Paul, because when Jesus came and died on the cross, and I'm going to end that video there. When Jesus died on the cross, the reasoning for that is so we would have access to God through him. Jesus is God who came in the flesh. Okay, so that's a big question everybody has, is how can Jesus and the Holy Spirit and God all be one? And you realize this, when God created man, he said, let us create him in our image. And man is created of flesh, spirit, and a soul. And God is the same. He is Jesus the flesh, Holy Spirit the spirit, God the soul. Three is one, same as we are. So God himself came, died. He was the living word, so that we would have access. We don't need a priest, because we have the Holy Spirit. We can pray, and we have God, right? You're muted.
I'm sorry, I am muted. I was just agreeing with you. I was just saying yes. Yes.
But that's all I have.
Well, let's
That's why Paul's teachings are different than the
That's pretty
apostles,
cool.
because the apostles were under a different law. When Jesus came and died on the cross, we're under the new covenant. We're under a new law.
Right.
So Paul's teachings would be different, because it's a different type of deal. Because the sacrifice Jesus made a new covenant for us.
Right.
Because the old covenant, the Gentiles and stuff would not have been accepted.
They were grafted in.
We would be grafted into them. Had Jesus not died, we wouldn't have been able to do that.
Yes.
He was
Yeah.
the ultimate sacrifice. So we've been live for an hour and 10 minutes. If you guys want to end, I'm cool with that.
I'm fine with
Yeah, I'm
that.
cool with that. I'm beat, like I said.
All right, guys. You guys stay safe and stay blessed.
Thank you
And,
everyone for coming in.
and we'll
Thank you,
see you
guys.
next.
Catch you later.